Hi, thanks for checking in. We're talking today about ComposiMold-FC, our food contact version of ComposiMold that can be used with chocolate and fondant and other edible treats.
Thank you very much, Michelle. First we want to show off a few examples. Yeah. Here's the transformer guy, and here's the clobbering guy.
This is a candy bar carved out of a linoleum block. This is a gum paste push mold. You could also make chocolate edible dishes for ice cream. And we will show you here an Easter egg that's white chocolate on the inside and dark on the out. This is a chocolate medallion and a Santa Claus wrapped in foil. There's also some fondant dominoes we made. You can do custom lollipops. And here's a perfect push mold that we had created. And quickly you can see the push mold technique. Super easy. One other cool thing is using ComposiMold to make casts and chocolate that you can put on top of a whoopie pie or a cupcake, which is really fun. Yeah. And this particular horseshoe was printed on a 3D printer, and then we made a ComposiMold of it.
Tastes better as chocolate. Yeah.
Yes.
Now we want to talk a little bit about the shapes that you can mold from simple one-part molds to more complicated ones. So, Michelle, why don't you talk a little bit about that one?
Sure. So this particular object, it's a small little bunny rabbit, has a flat back, so it makes it, keeping in mind that this is going to go flat against the bottom of the mold box, and that when you turn your mold over, all that space is going to be where you pour your chocolate into. So think about that. What's going on to the bottom of the mold box is going to be the space that you're pouring your chocolate or pressing your fondant down into. So I'll be putting this one, gluing it to the bottom of this mold box, and that's going to be a very easy, simple one-part mold. That's
a pretty simple one. Now a little bit more complicated than that is a two-part mold, or maybe a 1.5-part mold, where we take a guy, this case a little cowboy guy, and we're going to put him in the box the same way, a mold box the same way, and we're going to cut up along the sides after he's done to make it into a part that you separate into two. And what that does is it allows you to be more complicated to get both the front and the back of him at the same time. So this will be also put into a mold box like that and covered with ComposiMold around it.
Great.
Now you can also go more complicated than that. These are the two, this is simplest one-part molds, ideal for the fondants because you want to push it in there and then just pull it back out again. This one you can do fondant by putting in, squeezing it shut, and then pulling it apart. You can do fondant as well that way. More complicated, you can do more larger sizes. Here's a frog guy that we can mold into chocolate, and this one's a little bit more complicated as well. It's pretty cute, but what makes this more complicated is the holes in between here are going to, if you can see that, in between the different parts. That's going to make it more difficult. So what you're going to do in this case is do it either the same way as you would the cowboy, and just cut it with a knife afterwards to separate it into the two parts. So you actually, the ComposiMold would go under there, and you would cut it to make that line, and then you cut around it to make the parting line as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, an alternative way you could do this one is you could actually put it down, mold one half of it, build up with clay, or build up with a ComposiMold that you'll remelt afterwards to use. Build that part up, then do the second part, then flip it, and then do the first part of the mold over again. That's a more complicated two-part mold as well that we'll talk about later on. So
let's glue those down first so they don't
glue down. Yep. Here you go. I'll let you do it. Oh, okay.
Okay, the short cord.
What you do? Short cord. Okay.
You can use clay as well, or hot glue, to secure the object down to the bottom of the mold box. The light objects will float, so that can be frustrating. Is this guy melted?
We need some more.
Just a little hot glue. That's great.
Dip that guy in there. And we have two guys. And always down there if you can pick it up.
Yep, that's a good test.
The next stage after this is going to be putting on the mold release before we pour on the ComposiMold. We're using vegetable oil as our mold release.
Yep, that's simple enough, and it's food safe. Great. So we're going to spray that in there, and then use your hands or a paper towel and lightly move that around. You want to make sure that the mold release covers your whole object, any undercuts, as well as coats the whole mold box, because that's going to make sure that the mold itself comes out of that container. Also, build your own mold box with tin foil. If you didn't have the right shape, or you had a really large shape or odd shape, and you need to just build the tin foil up around it, which is a good way to do it.
And just make sure you spray the tin foil with the mold release as well, so that it doesn't stick to the ComposiMold.
Okay. So we melted the microwave.
Melted the microwave! Oh no! I'm sorry, again.
We melted the ComposiMold per the instructions on the lid, so that's convenient.
That's right.
And don't over stir it, don't over boil it, don't even boil it at all in the microwave. You don't want to introduce too many bubbles by boiling it or over stirring it. You can even leave a chunk of the ComposiMold that's unmelted to equilibrate the temperature of the ComposiMold.
Start off with short intervals in your microwave until you understand how it works. It's going to depend on where you are and the strength of your microwave. So this is basically melted. Shall I pour it? Which one? Should I pour both of them?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. We're going to start with a simple one-part mold guy. This is a little rabbit. I'm going to pour this on.
And when you pour your mold, pour it into the lowest part of the mold box so that the ComposiMold rises up and over the original object. That way any bubbles will rise up and out of the mold.
We'll do the two-part mold guy. And do the same thing.
Right, make sure the ComposiMold is about ½ an inch above the original object. Perfect.
There we go.
So we're going to pop these in the refrigerator and let them cool, and then we'll show you how to demold your character and pour your casting material, which is chocolate in this case.
Yummy.
Actually, we let them solidify in the refrigerator so that it would happen faster, and now we're ready to demold our characters. So what you do, which is pretty easy, flip it right over. Oops, mine was ready. It was so much vegetable oil on there. Press the bottom, and it will pop right out for you. You can also cut your container. You can also cut this container if you had to. And I'll show you mine first. All I have to do to demold this character is to pull the ComposiMold away from his body. And then I can easily just pull him out because of the mold release. So there's my mold, looking really good. And the opening is ready to have chocolate poured in.
Nice.
How's yours looking?
Well, mine's a little bit more complicated than that.
Right.
This is the two-part mold. So what I'm going to do is cut with just going to use a regular knife from our kitchen table. We're going to cut in the middle of the legs there. It doesn't particularly matter where it is, I just want to make it as close, as even as possible. And then I'm going to cut down the sides of it to separate this into two parts. And because this is a relatively simple two-part mold, we're still going to keep the bottom part together, so that way it's already connected. You don't have to worry about it being misaligned or anything with that. So
well, that's great.
Try.
So it's kind of like cutting it open like a book. And then will you tape it back together or somehow keep it?
Yeah, we'll use a little tape around on the outside of it just to hold together. You probably don't have to for something because this is so small compared to the rest of the mold. It'll probably stick together pretty well, but we will.
Okay.
Anyways, and one thing I'm not doing is putting my hand underneath my knife. Never want to do that. Haven't done that once or twice in my life.
No.
Here's the in between the legs. I'm going to hold it open a little bit. And see what I can do. I don't have to do anything. Thanks. Look at that.
Alright.
Now, because of chocolate, I am going to cut down a little bit further because the chocolate's more fragile than it is. So let me cut down a little bit further.
So when you're demolding the chocolate later, you'll want to make sure there's enough space when you open that mold back up.
Because it's still together, it's not going to require taping it to keep the chocolate in.
Okay. If you were doing a large mold and you needed to keep it together, you could, you could put cardboard on the outside and then tape all the way around. That would put some pressure on it.
Packaging tape is what I like because it can wrap right around the whole thing and stick to itself.
Great.
Okay. Next we need chocolate.
Chocolate. Now we've got some already melted. This is the dark chocolate already melted.
Wow, how did you melt that so fast?
Well, the power of television.
Alright, so now that we have this ready, I'm going to pour this into my guy, and we're going to go into the feet. How about we try the... I got it wait.
Okay, alright.
molds, instead of getting the bottles that you always have to clean afterwards and stuff, use a Ziploc bag or any sandwich bag and put the chocolate into that.
Can I help?
Sure, you want to hold that?
Okay.
Or either one. This way I can get the chocolate on your hands.
Oh, it's hot!
Nauseous. Chocolate doesn't get that hot, usually. I'm going to zip this part up. That's impossible. Then I'm going to squeeze this stuff down. And
I'm going to put your hands down.
yeah. Now we're going to squeeze chocolate through that hole into our mold.
If you didn't want your mold to be solid and you wanted it to be hollow for a larger shape, as you're pouring the chocolate in, you can pick your mold up and shake it around so that it coats the inside of the mold.
That's right. Good for bigger molds.
Great for bigger molds, because this guy is large. It would use a lot of chocolate, this bear here. So it's semi-hollow, you can see on the bottom there.
Right, now what's cool about the ComposiMold is you can actually see where it's filling up there. So what we're missing is a little bit of the lasso area there, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. Separate this, squeeze some chocolate right in that spot. What we're doing now is just tapping to get rid of any air bubbles that are in there. We will set that aside.
Alright, the white chocolate is melted. It's going to be all hyped up. Alright, here's my mold. I'm going to go ahead and pour the white chocolate in. I'm just going to use this little stir stick to make sure it gets down into each of the little crevices here. And I'm also going to do that tapping method too to make sure all the chocolate gets down into all the nooks and crannies.
My favorite is the white chocolate.
That's why there's very little of that around here. Alright, I might have overdone it, but that's alright. I'm going to give it a little tap on the table. And because it's see-through, I can make a check here to make sure it gets down into all the feet. It's looking pretty good.
Ow! Okay, now we'll sit those in the refrigerator for a few moments, and we'll pull them out and make another chocolate.
Alright.
Fast.
Through the power of television.
Wow!
So, our chocolates were in the refrigerator for less than 10 minutes.
That's right, it only takes a couple minutes in the refrigerator to cool. You can stick it in the freezer to cool faster. Start off with a simple one here. This is a 1-part rabbit part. This is going to be a pretty simple one to do.
I like to flip the mold over and bend the mold away from the cast. That way you don't warp the chocolate. And if you're using fondant, same thing. You want to carefully pull the mold or bend the mold away from your cast. So here's my little rabbit.
Nice.
Looking good. He's got a little bit of what we call flashing, which is a little bit of chocolate that's came out onto the flat part. But with chocolate, it's super easy. You can snap that off, or you can use an X-Acto knife and clean up the edge. So there's my little rabbit so far.
Chocolate is probably one of the greatest casting materials because it's reusable, just like the ComposiMold.
Exactly.
So the parts that you don't use, just remelt it and do it again.
Yep. So there's my little rabbit. Let's see what your guy looks
Alright,
like.
let's see what my cowboy looks like. You know, we should have done a horse and a cowboy is what we should have
It's
done.
true, but we did a rabbit and a cowboy.
Rabbit and cowboy, yeah. Okay, so here we go. Basically, I'm just going to separate this guy, similar process. Peel it back, and push it back up. Why don't you pull it right up? Here we go.
Alright, looking good. And he's got a little bit of flashing like we explained, so we can just snap that away and clean up that edge.
I'll let you have that piece.
Oh, thank you, but I'm not going to.
Aren't you good?
I don't eat chocolate.
Yeah, right.
So here's my your character, the front and the back. So we have a 3-dimensional object now instead of just a flat one. And he would look great with your characters over there in another cake.
Yep. I think the thing is going to clobber him. Oh, I like that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The little guy on the whoopie pie and his little bunny rabbit friend.
Very nice. Now the molds are set to go for making more chocolates. We can make as many as we want here. And then when we're finished with these parts, we're just going to remelt them and keep them for the next time we want to make chocolates or whatever else we want to do with them.
Or as we say, just remelt to reuse up to 35 times.
Very nicely said.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It was beautiful.
Beautiful. Yes, beautiful.
Thanks for watching our video about ComposiMold-FC. Check us out at www.composimold.com.